Good evening, I'm David Brown, and this is the Northern Sun Experience. All season long, one game has been highlighted on the calendar, Minnesota State at Sioux Falls. The Mavericks, national runners-up from a year ago, handed the Coup its only loss last season. And that one defeat denied USF a chance at even competing in the D2 playoffs. Now, this year, both teams are 8-1 and had a chance to solidify their postseason chances Saturday at Bob Young Field. But it was the Mavericks firmly in control from the beginning. Nick Piericini to Bryce Duncan, 6-yard strike, 7-0 MSU. 10-zip now in the second when Piericini takes it in himself. Minnesota State would build a 27-0 halftime lead. Third quarter, the Coup finally get on the board with this Brett Garner 32-yard field goal. That's all the points they would get. Duncan gets his second touchdown of the afternoon right here. And then Piericini would finish it off. 2 rushing touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns, and the game of the year turns out to be a one-sided affair. Minnesota State clobbers Sioux Falls 44-3. Augustana, right on the edge of playoff contention, was at Winona State. C.J. Ham's 5-yard touchdown gets things started, 7-0 Vikings. But Winona State comes back in style. Off the reverse, it's receiver Alan May with the pass to Josh Mikas. 80 yards to the house, and we're tied at 7. Warriors up 14-7 when the Vikings work the short game. Trey Hyde to Justin Greenway, and he does the rest. 51 yards to Paydirt on the screen, and we'd be tied at halftime. Third quarter, Winona up 24-21. May catches a touchdown pass this time from Jack Nelson. 22 yards, 31-21 at that point. 34-28 Winona State. Last play of the game, Augie 6 yards away from a touchdown. Hyde nearly gets sacked, but somehow finds Charlie Hayes as time expires. Lucas Wainman nails the extra point, and that would provide the final difference. Augie's playoff hopes and season remain alive with a 35-34 victory. So thanks to Augie's heroics and USF's loss, here are the latest Super Region 3 rankings. And with just 1 week to go in the regular season, Sioux Falls, Minnesota State, and Augustana are all still projected to be playoff teams, although there's obviously been a shakeup in the rankings. Minnesota State moves all the way from number 6 to number 2 in the standings, while Sioux Falls drops from number 4 to number 7, just hanging on. Augustana, meanwhile, moves up from number 7 to number 5. Again, the top 7 teams in the region make the playoffs, which is a change from last year when it was just the top 6. When we come back on the Northern Sun Experience, we head to Bemidji, where the Beavers were looking to win 7 straight games for the first time in school history.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. Well, the hottest team in the NSIC right now is Bemidji State. The Beavers have won 6 games in a row, and just last weekend took a 1-game lead over Minnesota Duluth for the NSIC North Division title. The Bulldogs have had a share of every North Division title since they re-entered the conference in 2008. Beavers could deny the Bulldogs a share of an 8th straight division title Saturday in Bemidji, but Darren Walker has other ideas. 14-yard touchdown gives UMD an early lead. Later in the first, Nate Ricci, filling in for the injured Drew Bauer, takes it in himself. Bulldogs have a 14-0 lead less than halfway through the opening quarter. But the Beaver defense would hold them from there. The offense, led by Jordan Hines-Snee, cuts the deficit to 14-6. It's now 14-9. Last play of the game, Bemidji State trying to pull a Cal Stanford or Miami Duke, if we want current references, but they don't even get close to the end zone. Minnesota Duluth holds on for the 14-9 victory. In other North Division action, Northern State was at St. Cloud State, and starting off in style, off the reverse flea flicker, it's Kyle Levant to a wide-open Tyrell Anderson, 26 yards, Wolves up 7-zip. Huskies come right back down. Nate Meyer to Grant Thayer, 42 yards untouched, and we're tied at 7. Huskies up late in the fourth when Levant finds Connor Doherty for the touchdown. The Wolves would retake the lead, and then NSU's defense would hold on from there as they get the 31-24 victory. Minot State visited Minnesota Crookston this weekend. Touchdown here to Ray Watkins for the Beavers, who cut the UMC lead to 10-7, but that was as close as they would get. Dre Person with a 3-yard run on the option for the Golden Eagles, who led 17-7 at halftime. And they would continue to work the ground game in the third. Person breaks free for 63 yards. He had 4 touchdowns on the afternoon. Minnesota Crookston gets its first win of the season, 45-14 over Minot State. Let's stay in the north. UMary taking on Minnesota State Moorhead. That's running back Zane Medhog taking the direct snap, and Kane Griffith doing the rest. 72 yards with nothing but open space in front of him, 7-0 Dragons. And you know what? Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Medhog bobbles this direct snap, but Preston Prince cleans up the mess. 64 yards to the house. Minnesota State Moorhead all over UMary, 37-0. Upper Iowa taking on Wayne State Saturday. Let's start in overtime, tied at 24. Brent Lammers to Trey McTaggart, 13 yards, makes it 31-24 Peacocks. On Wayne State's OT possession, they tie it back up. Taylor Reedy to Jonathan Parks, 5-yard strike. We go to double overtime, but in that frame, Brady Bushel nails this 34-yard field goal, and the Peacocks top the Wildcats 34-31 in double overtime. And finally, Southwest Minnesota State hoping to bounce back from a blowout loss, taking on Concordia St. Paul. This is the Golden Bears' Sammy Bacham with a 20-yard touchdown that tied the game at 7. But the Mustangs strike back in a hurry. Ashanti Payne, not always there when you call, but always on time. 56 yards to the house, 14-7 SMSU. It's 14-10 later in the second when Blake Gimble finds Nate Hewitt for the 16-yard touchdown. That increases the lead to 21-10. Hewitt would have another touchdown in the fourth, 8 catches, 89 yards, and 2 scores on the afternoon, as SMSU tops Concordia St. Paul 48-24. So here we go. It's the final regular season weekend for NSIC football and a couple of critical games for the Sioux Falls teams. USF and Augie both need a win to potentially secure their playoff spots. The Cougars will start out at noon, traveling to Upper Iowa to take on the Peacocks. Meanwhile, the Vikings will host Concordia St. Paul at 1 p.m. In other 1 o'clock action, Minnesota State will look to get its 10th win as they host Wayne State, while Bemidji State travels to Northern State. Southwest Minnesota State still has an outside shot at the playoffs, but they'll definitely need a win over Winona State along with some help to crack the top 7 in the regional rankings. St. Cloud State visits the University of Mary, Minnesota State Moorhead takes on Minnesota Crookston, and Minot State travels to Minnesota Duluth. When we come back, the story of Concordia St. Paul defensive end Hank Goff, who embodies the mind and spirit of a veteran in more ways than one.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. This upcoming Saturday, Concordia St. Paul defensive lineman Hank Goff will play his final collegiate game. But this senior is more like a super senior in terms of both age and life experience, in a journey that's taken him down many paths on the road back to football. There's no sunlight to be seen on this dreary morning, but Hank Goff is certainly shining. After all, he's got it made in the shade, getting a day off from practice while watching his teammates get after it.
They know it takes a couple more days for me to recover from these young guys. They're out there back out in one day. It takes me a couple days, so they all they call me old and everything, but they all appreciate it. They know I'm there.
Hank still takes the time to help the rest of his teammates perfect their technique during this morning practice, and they should really listen to him, because most of these kids were in grade school when Hank first started his college career. Hank Goff is 28 years old.
It's like I have 100 little brothers. I'm just like, what are you even talking about? So, I'm cooler than most of my older friends because I know what's going on at 18-year-old world, but...
College football is supposed to be where boys become men. Hank Goff became a man long before enrolling at Concordia St. Paul. A highly recruited prospect out of the Twin Cities, Hank chose to attend South Dakota State in 2005 and made an immediate impact.
Hank was a phenomenal athlete for his size, unbelievable potential.
His leadership on the field was never in question. Off the field, however, it never added up.
I didn't go to class. I didn't do homework. I thought I was bigger than life.
We always mentor young men. We check their classes. When they fall short, we reprimand them. We hold them accountable. But bottom line is, we're not going to walk a guy to class.
I was 18, and I just didn't listen to anyone. I didn't, I wasn't taking care of the school side of it. No one could tell me anything, and I was just blowing my, my shot at playing D1, and eventually I did.
Hank left South Dakota State after his freshman year and had no idea what to do next.
I wasn't hanging out with the best crowd. I wasn't making the best decisions. One morning I kind of woke up and I was like, God, I'm a loser. So I went out and thought of the hardest thing I could do, so I went out and joined the Marine Corps.
If Hank thought his college coaches and professors were tough, he was in for a whole new ballgame.
I went to boot camp, and that was a culture shock. My first letter home to my mom said, "Dear Mom, I'm sorry I was ever 18.
After what Hank describes as 3 straight months of just getting screamed at, he went to infantry training to become a machine gunner. Soon after that, he was deployed to Afghanistan.
My unit was the first unit in Afghanistan since '01, so it was kind of like the Wild Wild West when we were there. I was pretty much the suppressing fire for my squad, so if we got into a firefight, I would suppress and then other guys would maneuver.
Hank and his unit left Afghanistan after 9 months. And after 3 more years, including a non-combat tour in the South Pacific, he decided it was time to move on from the Marines. But while the actual war overseas may have stopped for Hank, the war at home was just beginning.
There's a big epidemic in the veteran community right now, suicide. So we're all looking out for each other. I think I've lost upwards of over 45 people between suicide, like motorcycle accidents, and like KIAs. We've lost about over 45 people. I've lost just as many guys to suicide as I did in Afghanistan.
The adjustment back home, coupled with the continued loss of his closest friends, left Hank right where he started after he left SDSU.
My head was just not ready. It's a culture shock. You come home from somewhere where they tell you to do every single thing, how to do it, when to do it, how fast to do it. And then I came home like, oh, this is fun. I can do whatever I want now. So I had a lot of fun for a year, and then after that first year, that's when the suicide started coming up and everything. And my mom got sick, and it was just a brutal year. And then that's when I was like, you know what, I got to do something. So I decided I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to try to play football.
Hank landed at Concordia St. Paul in the fall of 2013 with 3 years of football eligibility remaining. It's a campus just 30 minutes from where he grew up.
Hank's a great football player, and he's an even better person. And that's the best way to describe it. His positive characteristics, honestly, are endless. With his maturity and his life experience, and it's just experience that you can't buy. It's awesome.
I can't lie. I treat Hank Goff differently than I treat everybody else. And I feel like that's the best way that Hank is going to be able to do what he is capable of doing.
The age gap between Hank and his teammates is always a source of humor among the Golden Bears, but they're well aware of what he's experienced.
What he's gone through is a cakewalk compared to college football, and it's good for these kids to know that you might be hurting now, but it could be a lot worse.
A lot of these kids are like me. I had to learn the hard way, but I always tell them this is what's going to happen. Whether they listen to me, that's on them.
Hank's first season of college football was 2005. His last season will be 2015. Bookends to a decade filled with stats. Over 20 tackles for loss on the football field, and more than twice that lost on the battlefield. The game of football and the game of life often lead to war metaphors or cliches. And while Hank says those comparisons don't bother him, the idea of camaraderie and always having people in your corner is why the sun will always shine for Hank, even on the cloudiest of days.
His amount of loyalty to those guys that he fought with and the guys that he plays with, Hank Goff is one of those guys that's not playing for Hank Goff. Hank Goff is playing for the guys that can't do what he's able to do.
I hurt every single day, but it shows me I know what I'm made of. I was up for 3 days in a firefight. If I got to run conditioning, oh well, suck it up, Hank. It's not that bad. This is fun.
Hank went the wrong direction, but the goal is that you plant some seeds, good seeds, and eventually they figure out what's the best way to live their life, and that's why my heart is warm.
Football saved my life. You know, I was not going the right way. It did save my life. It gave me a purpose.
Hank would like to stick around football and possibly be a graduate assistant coach next year, but he says if that path doesn't work, he'll train to become a firefighter. Well, coming up next, highlights from the NSIC soccer tournament and a look ahead to the big dance.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back. The NSIC soccer tournament wrapped up this weekend, and once again, Minnesota State was hoping to emerge as champions. The Mavs have won the past 2 conference tournament titles, and they started off on the right foot in the quarterfinals, topping Concordia St. Paul 6-2. That set up a semifinal matchup with Winona State. No score in the 53rd minute when the visitors strike first. Warriors get it ahead to Abby Bohanski, who bends it in off the right side, her 11th goal of the year, 1-0 Winona State. 78th minute, Mavericks get the equalizer as Corey Cronforce puts home the rebound for the 1-1 tie, but Winona State would actually win the game in a shootout 3-0, knocking off the Mavs. Now the other semifinal was Minot State against Augustana. 38th minute, Mackenzie Main slips through the defense and fires it in for her first goal of the season to give the Vikings a 1-0 lead. Second half, 73rd minute, Beavers even things up. Megan Kawahara gets the rebound after the keeper heads out just a little bit too far, and we are tied at 1. But with less than 3 minutes remaining in regulation, Augie would pull it out. Emily Jacobson fires it in from 20 yards away, and Augie moves on in dramatic fashion with a 2-1 victory. So that set up the championship match between Augustana and Winona State. Scoreless through the first half, and the struggle would continue in the second. Winona's shot from Haley Bach is stopped, but Augustana would finally break through. 53rd minute, after the corner kick, the persistence from Sam Timkowitz pays off, her 14th goal of the season, and that would be it. The Vikings win their first conference tournament championship, 1-0 over Winona State. Augie's victory gave them an automatic berth in the NCAA Central Region tournament, but all of the conference semifinalists made it to the big dance. Despite its semifinal loss, Minnesota State is the 2nd seed in the Central Region and will host the winner of the 3rd-seeded Vikings and the number 6 seed Harding out of Arkansas. Meanwhile, number 4 Minot State and number 5 Winona State will square off in a first-round matchup, with the winner of that game going up against the top seed in Central Missouri. Some more news and notes from around the NSIC, and the top 4 conference volleyball teams remain the top 4 teams in the entire country. Concordia St. Paul is still number 1 with 29 first-place votes. Southwest Minnesota State is still 2nd, receiving 8 first-place votes. Northern State moves up 1 spot to 3rd with 2 first-place votes, while Wayne State falls 1 spot into a tie for 4th place. And a quick congratulations to the Augustana and MSU Moorhead men's cross-country teams. Both the Vikings and Dragons advanced out of the NCAA Central Region to the national championship in 2 weeks. Augie won its 4th consecutive Central Region title, while the Dragons finished in 5th, earning the last team spot for nationals, which will be held Saturday, November 21st in Joplin, Missouri. As far as NSIC women's teams, 3 advanced out of their Central Region to the national championships. Minnesota Duluth finished in 2nd place overall, while Augustana makes its 10th straight trip to nationals by placing 3rd. The University of Mary finished in 4th. Congrats to all the men's and women's cross-country teams for advancing to the ultimate stage. Coming up next, it's DBs Picks, my top 5 plays or moments of the past week in the NSIC.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. It's time for DB's Picks, my top 5 plays or moments of the past week in the NSIC. At number 5, we head to Winona, where the Warriors once again get tricky. Off the reverse receiver, Alan May finds Josh Mikas for an 80-yard touchdown. Winona State's been known to bust out a trick play every couple of games, and this year is no different. Despite another up-and-down season, this play gets a thumbs up from me at number 5. At number 4, more trickery. Northern State uses a reverse flea flicker to find Tyrell Anderson wide open for a 26-yard touchdown. Here it is again, Nick Trewin to Zach Barber, back to quarterback Kyle Lavond, and then a perfect pass to Anderson. The Wolves are undefeated in North Division play, thanks in part to these kinds of plays. At number 4, our top 3 plays celebrate 3 different sports in Augustana. The bronze medal in this trilogy goes to the Vikings soccer team for winning its first conference tournament, topping SMSU, Minot State, and Winona State en route to the title. The Vikings ended up with the 3rd seed in the Central Region, so it only makes sense they finish as play number 3. For number 2, it's a game-winning 2 from hoopster Dan Jansen. It may only be an exhibition, but this buzzer beater to top the University of Iowa counts just the same. The Augie men are expected to compete for the Division II National Championship this season, and having a Big Ten win on the resume in dramatic fashion is good enough for play number 2 of the week. But our number 1 play is easily the one that kept Augie's football playoff hopes alive. On the last play of regulation versus Winona State, Trey Hyde somehow gets off this pass to Charlie Hayes for the game-tying touchdown as time expires. Lucas Wainman would hit the extra point for the ultimate victory, but another H&H connection kept the Viking ship afloat. Augie's 1-point win from Hyde to Hayes counts as play number 1 of the past week. Once again, a thank you to all of our NSIC member schools for their time and contributions to this week's show. We'll be back next week with yet another Northern Sun Experience.